Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. See you all kind of slowly jumping in. My name is Matt Jensen, and this is our Thursdays at 3. We call it Thursdays at 3. Just kidding. I won't go because um, because it's at 3:30. I can see a lot of our friends on here, and several are continuing to join, so that's exciting. I'm here to talk about today. We're here to talk about database management, and I'm here with my friend Creed Walker. But before I introduce him, I just want to let you know this is a really uh, casual. Um, Presentation and a way for us to get together as business leaders, either on the industry side or the practice side, to see how to implement the best offerings and do better for our doctors and our patients. And I found as an administrator, it was really difficult to find where to go when I wanted to know more about implementation or new ideas. And so after a while, we looked at our team at MJM and just said we should probably just create it. Every week, a place for people to run into it and see topically what might be on our minds, and if it's interesting to them, we'll be talking about it. But it's unmistakably placed right in the middle of the week and every week, so we can uh, so you don't forget when it's happening. And so I just want to give everybody an opportunity if you want to, and you don't have to. But I see Chris Bonsall is here. Chris, you're tuning in from Navigate. Thanks for joining.
For having me.
We've got Casey Gantz here, a longtime friend and CEO of Alliance Vision Institute in Dallas, Texas. Hi, Casey.
Matt.
And then we've got, looks like Jeremy Clegg. I think he's tuning in as part of your team, correct, Creed?
Yes. Yeah.
He's making sure he's the regulatory. He's making sure Creed's going to say things correctly. And
Compliance.
Trisha, compliance, right? Trisha, uh, Greg, Stephanie, Trevor, you're free to introduce yourselves if you'd like to, and you don't have to.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Servi. I'm with Brevium and work closely with Creed as well. I'm here to listen in and see what you guys got to say.
All right. How about you, Greg?
Same here. I'm with Brevium, also work with Creed.
Excellent. And Trevor, if you can hear me.
Yeah, just in marketing with Brevium, joining to listen up on what you guys have to say. Excited for it.
Excellent. Good. Well, there's a couple of people still joining in, and as they do, we may call on them to introduce themselves, but this will be a fun conversation. Now, like I mentioned, Thursdays at 3 is a clearinghouse for us to talk topically about things that are pressing or ideas we have on how to improve practice implementation. We cover things from technology to team culture. It's been technology heavy lately because of where we are in the market. Everybody seems to be having a good year volume wise by way of surgeries, yet their refractive or elective procedures are down, and that kind of bums them out. And so today, we're going to be talking about something I challenged Creed and Steve and others and at Brevium to at the end of last year about how we think of the patients that are already part of our program. And before I get into that, I just want to give Creed uh, the setup that he deserves. Creed is part of Brevium's team. Brevium is known for reactivation, and I remember, boy, it was probably 16 years ago when our team actually helped Brevium make some of their very first brochures. And I remember a friend of mine and mentor, Candy Simerson, who was the CEO of Minnesota Eye Institute, said Brevium has a license to print cash. Now, Steve didn't allow us to put that in the brochure, but I thought that was a compelling testimonial from one of your clients because it's basically taking your existing clientele and figuring out once they've fallen off your schedule, how to very simply get them back on your schedule. Creed, maybe tell us a little bit about you, how long you've been a part of the team, and what your favorite color is.
Yeah. Great. That's a great question lineup. Favorite color is, I don't know, green probably. been with Brevium since September of last year. So just under a year I've been here. Before Brevium, I was at another healthcare software company. So been a part of healthcare for a number of years now, but new-ish to the Brevium team. But I mean, what we have is pretty impactful for practices. I mean, a license to print money, but then also, I mean, it genuinely is. We're always looking out for how to help those patient outcomes and I mean, all kinds of stuff that we can look for throughout your database. So happy to be here.
Give us a little overview, Creed, about what Brevium does.
Yeah. Yep. So Brevium, been around, if you're unfamiliar with the company, been around since 2004, in ophthalmology the whole time. We do something that's called patient reactivation, as you hinted to. So what that means is we will integrate with the practice management system. So we integrate with 50 plus practice management systems. If you're on it, we probably integrate to it. Think of all your big ones, obviously, and then even into the smaller ones. We ingest a bunch of data, a lot of data from that practice management system, including all of your patient demographic information, CPT codes, ICD-10 codes, scheduling information, payer information. From there, we start to organize those patients, and we look for, specifically right now, we look for patients that are previously been seen by the practice, but have no upcoming appointments, no scheduled outreach. And then we run some campaigns to get them back into the clinic via text, emails, auto calls, postcards. I mean, whatever way that we can, short of sending a pigeon to your house, we'll do anything we can to try to get that patient to come back in, but make sure that we're reaching out to the right patients that align with the practice's goals. So that's what we do.
Yeah, and it's a powerful tool. A practice like ours, where we have 10 sites and almost 500 employees. I remember thinking to myself, well, we have team members whose whole job it is to understand our data, and so certainly we can do this on our own. And yet, because of the other projects that we had them doing, we would never get around to pulling it off. What do you say to practices who are trying to do it on their own, compared to your, turnkey solution?
Yeah. So there's a couple of things with trying to do it on your own. First of all, you pretty immediately, even if you hire, I mean, you could go hire people like what you're talking about, Matt, that are extremely data savvy. They could come in, and this is somebody that can, I mean, they can find whatever they need and they can make sense of it and be able to present it to a company and organization. The first thing you run into, even if you hire someone like that, is a lot of times these practice management systems, just by virtue of how they've set up their technology, you just can't access a lot of the data that's in there. And if you can, it's a really messy process of combining multiple reports from different places within there and trying to then compile and do all kinds of Excel gymnastics. So that's the first thing, is you can try to do it yourself, but in a lot of cases, there's just data you can't get access to in a centralized spot, even through your practice management. The second thing is, now you're just talking about hiring somebody that's very expensive, and you also, there's no automation that comes along with that. So even if you can pull that data once, now imagine having to pull that every day for every site and then give it access to every admin at every site and every physician that wants to see it. It just, I mean, you can see it just starts to become a nightmare really quickly.
Well, and I think there's power of focus. This is all we do, and therefore we have a certain amount of excellence, and we run it, very completely from beginning of, report pull to fulfillment. And we've got an offering that can be priced around that. Whereas when you're trying to do it, and it's in addition to your other reports that your overzealous CEO like myself is asking you to run, I mean, that you can get wrapped around the axle pretty quick. Now, I want to be careful because it's not today's not a sales pitch, but it is a plea for people to work from their own database. The rule that I always heard growing up in the marketing world is the best source of new business is existing business, right? And that's kind of an ism that's pretty common in the business world. And yet, when it comes to healthcare, we don't really think that way. We think, especially in ophthalmology, that we need to be going into new markets. We need to figure out how to get new people who've never thought of us before. When it stands to reason that if you've been in business for a time, you have happy patients that are under your care that maybe have shifted into another category segment where they need, another kind of care that somebody under your roof offers. And here's the problem. One of the things that I think is really perilous in healthcare is it's one of the most unique offering. It's the most intimate offering in all of the world. And we give so much information to our providers. We give them our social security number, our weight, our blood type, our date of birth, our next of kin, our emergency contact, right? They know whether or not we have incontinence, depression, anxiety, heart disease, all the things. And yet providers use almost none of it to make our experience better, but also like proactively. Hey, I couldn't help but notice you're now in an age group, that is of the right offering. So, for example, Creed, you and I were preparing for this call earlier today, and I told you I wasn't going to be by my computer, and it was because I was seeing my primary doctor. Because now that I'm somewhere in my 40s, it's time to schedule that colonoscopy. Right. So I need a referral. And I had to reach out to him. How great would it have been if the minute that we hit my birthday, I got a text or whatever saying, hey, you've got an automatic referral. You should just click here to move forward. So those kinds of creature comforts, I think, are missing in healthcare, and we've come to expect it, but the system isn't ripe to deliver on that promise. And so Brevium is the most complete option in my mind that we have at our fingertips in ophthalmology to be able to have the system act like people already expect that it does. And so I want to talk a little bit about what we talked about last fall, because we sat down, and I think I freaked you out a little bit, Creed, because I was talking fast and I was excited, and I was on a kick about glaucoma, because there was this righteous indignation that I had about, we keep putting people on drops, they keep not taking them because of cost or because of side effects or because they just can't get around to getting to the pharmacy. They stop taking them because they're confused with that and the other couple of drops that they're on, or they're taking them incorrect. There's so many reasons that when it's all said and done, people say that that of all people who take drops, it's like 10 to 30% who are actually compliant. And yet it's our first line treatment for glaucoma, which is a progressive disease that you can't tell that you have until it's totally impeding your vision. It's the silent thief, they call it. And it just seems to me, I've started talking to Creed about, the best people to get the message out are the people who are already bolted onto your database. Do you mind kind of recounting our conversation, Creed, and kind of where you were, or mindset wise, when we were first talking about segmentation that way?
Yeah, absolutely. And you came to me to Brevium in a tizzy, and then we're like reeling back, trying to figure out, oh my gosh, okay, now I got to figure out exactly what drops are, and you're talking like college level glaucoma treatment. So I'm happy to say now we are very well versed in the world of glaucoma over here at Brevium. I probably know too much about glaucoma for my own good, but there's, obviously when you came, there's a lot of different things that you can and really should be doing as a practice. Now, there's a little bit of a dance, though, that happens that we all know in the ophthalmology world and in healthcare, to back up one step when you're saying, yeah, we expect a certain level, like with other services or other companies that we go visit, there's a lot of automation that happens, and we don't have to proactively ask somebody to, hey, will you please give me another product or service, or will you sell me something else? But in healthcare, it's very reactive. And for glaucoma, that was the main message that comes across is from your conversation and then having lots and lots of conversations with practices and other industry folks. It's just that very reactive nature to treatment and especially treatment of glaucoma. And so what we started doing was looking internally here at Brevium and saying, hey, look, we have a wealth of data and a really sophisticated way to organize patients. How can we help in the righteous mission that Matt is endeavoring on? And then you learn more and more, and there's a whole cohort of people that are on the same journey. And so how can Brevium support that and make sure that we're not holding back the industry, but moving forward with, people don't, it's widely acknowledged that drops are not the best treatment option for glaucoma, yet that's still the number one treatment option that's happening today. And so how can Brevium, in what we're strong in, how can we help with that? And not only for, again, we don't want to turn this into like just some Brevium sales pitch, but like generally, if you know a lot about your database and what information you have about your patients, how can you leverage that? Whether you're using Brevium, whether you're using just your practice management, whether you do have a robust internal team that can help you with that, how can we leverage our knowledge about databases to further that? And that's what we took away from those conversations. And obviously, it's been a great journey since then of development and understanding and trying to produce some meaningful things.
Well, and I love the way that you've responded to the call because, when we talk about the current state of glaucoma care and the first line treatments currently being drops, and wanting to move more towards an interventional approach, which is first line treatment being a procedure, and then using drops as a bridge therapy between that procedure and the next procedure, because the progression will almost assuredly continue to happen the longer you live, and treatments will have to continue to escalate. Only when you have a procedure are you truly, quote, under management. And so, your database segmentation becomes really important because if I, as an administrator, I'm thinking, okay, so who are the people who are in our program who are on a drop of some kind? Okay. In addition, who are people who have already come in for cataract surgery, who we know are on a drop of some kind? Because recently, we know that MIGS, we used to have to submit to insurance, but they could only be reimbursed if they were done alongside a cataract procedure. And so there was a lot of times where someone would come in, but they, we couldn't necessarily do a MIGS procedure because it wasn't there. They didn't have a cataract in their eye. Well, now, there's options that are called standalone, so we can. By the way, what that means is any cataract patient we've ever done that we know are on drops is suddenly a candidate for these procedures that can help, intervene in the progression, and probably make the patient's life better because no one loves the drops. They're uncomfortable, they're expensive. And so the patient's happy, the doctor's happy because they're truly, living up to their oath of taking care of their patients. And it turns out, reimburses okay as well, much like a cataract procedure would. And so it's a win-win-win by doing the right thing. And that just doesn't come along as often as we'd hope in the healthcare world. So that database segmentation then turns into, okay, now we're back to our core, which is we've got this list of patients now. Let's get them back on the books, which, we established early on is something you do so well. So you're doing kind of these beta programs in a couple of places. Creed, tell us a little bit about the setup. You don't have to say where or how, but just like what is the basic setup? What are the findings you've had? And then what are they doing with the data?
Yeah. So in terms of the setup, so when you're looking at like a practice that's trying to, let's say, or we're looking at a practice that is looking at being more interventional to their treatment of glaucoma. And there's a few things that have happened. Maybe their providers they've already done more and they're bought in from a medical standpoint. The providers are bought in. They're like, hey, look, I really want to be doing more procedural treatment to help these glaucoma patients. Well, the next question is, again, well, how do we even start from an administrative side to help support that and actually get more of these drops patients to start to be procedure treatment-based patients for glaucoma? Well, when we look at that, there are a few different touch points in that patient journey where every practice needs to pay attention to. So if we're looking at a practice management system and just a population of patients within a practice, there is a giant cohort of patients that are on the schedule already, that are coming in. They're, moderate glaucoma patients. They keep their appointments regularly. Maybe they're on track with their visual fields and OCTs and IOP checks. Maybe they're not, but they're still coming in all the time. But then there's another cohort that are not on the schedule at all, that don't have an upcoming appointment, that don't have a recall. And these are the ones that are, look, they're guaranteed non-compliant with their drops. Like they're not even showing up for their appointments. They're not taking their drops. They're probably not even refilling their drops. Like they're just not. So when you're looking at those two cohorts of patients, what we can look at is, look, for the ones that are not on the schedule at all, those are the ones that need the reactivation, right? So let's run some campaign and say, hey, look, let's get you back into the clinic. Let's get you back on the schedule. You're slowly going blind. It's not going to work out well for you in the end. So let's get you back in. We'll automate that already at Brevium, but even if you don't have Brevium as a practice, do that. Don't let these patients just float out there in the ecosystem going blind by themselves. Now, once they're on the schedule, there's a very important thing that starts to happen is, as a practice, what I recommend, and I think, Matt, you also recommend this to a heavy degree, is, look, if they're on the schedule and they're coming in and this is a candidate for some sort of interventional treatment, let's start early and do some education campaigns. And I know Chris.
Pre-education.
Yeah, pre-education. I know Chris was on the call. I don't know if he still is, but look, there's services like Navigate, or you can run just automated, just send out an email, send a text, send a postcard and say, you probably hate your drops, right? There's other options for you. You're not locked in. Let's think about something else. Now, when they enter the practice, there's also an operational component of, let's make sure that the practice is aware that these patients are coming in. And hey, Matt's walking in the door today. He has glaucoma and he's a candidate for a procedure. Don't let Matt walk out with at least telling him what the options are. So as a company, Brevium, we obviously are already automating this patient reactivation side where, look, let's make sure they're on the schedule, coming in, and at a minimum getting their tests and everything. Now, what we are developing now and helping practices understand, and this is not a solo mission by Brevium. You're heavily involved, Matt. There's a lot of industry folks, a lot of practice admins out there that are trying to do the same thing. We're just in a unique spot where we can help people understand their database and help them do those next steps of pre-education and educate the care team and all of that. So when we work with a practice, those are all the things that we're doing, is we integrate with their practice management system. We reactivate those patients that are lost to follow-up and needing that reactivation. But then we also are assisting on the operational side as well to make sure that they're actually having the conversations that are needed.
Well, and I think we're not far from the days, Creed, where we handle it almost like we used to do with laser vision correction, which is, we can explain this in 90-minute conversations, one patient at a time, or we can also, in an outbound fashion or with letters, just say, listen, we're going to send a letter to these 500 people, and we're just going to say, Dr. Walker is going to be having an educational session at 4:30, on a couple of Mondays from now. We really urge you to be there. If you're at all frustrated with your drops, we're going to want you're going to want to hear this education. And that turns into however many show up. but I'll bet they do. And then a different kind of flow within the practice, which is a first line treatment can be something like an SLT, which is a very quick procedure, which you don't have to have a failed therapy for, although they probably do have a failed therapy because they got on the list because they're on a drop. And I just imagine a whole new workflow where patients coming in, we've got 30 scheduled in an afternoon. The doctor is meeting them really quickly, taking them back to do the SLT, and we're talking 5-minute turns. And I don't think that while some might feel like that's a little bit of a cattle call, I think that we can do it in such a way where it doesn't feel that way with how it's staged, and we can help a lot of patients efficiently. But that's a different mindset than glaucoma has ever enjoyed, and that's where I kind of get into the righteous part. Like, we're going to help a lot of patients, and it also pays. And so
Yeah.
I look forward to those days when that becomes more standard of care, the drive-through, SLT experience. Uh,
Yeah.
Now it's not just the category of glaucoma that is, you know, something that you're thinking about. I've also pushed you on the category. I'm just jumping to a new slide um, of oh, excuse me. You're seeing all my laundry. Can you see that still okay, Creed?
We can see it.
We don't sit on our hands for very long because the same implications of your offering can be had in the premium cataract patient realm. And what do I mean by that? Well, there's one lens in particular that, with as many seminars and webinars with doctors and their teams as our team, our marketing team performs, we hear them say all the time, the light adjustable lens is a great lens. Obviously, it's the best workbench for post LASIK patients or post RK patients or post, AK patients. And for those of you who aren't in the clinic, who are on the call, you might be thinking, okay, so I don't get it. Why? Well, it's because, LASIK works by, things out in the distance are blurry because the focal point, as light comes into the eye and it's bent by that cornea, it comes to a focal point, hopefully right on this retina, and it's transferred as a clear image to the brain. But if your eye is too cone-like, too steep, it's going to come to a focal point too early, right? That's myopia, and or nearsightedness. Or if it's too flat, it's farsightedness, and it comes to a focal point behind the retina, both of which cause blur. So what LASIK does is we make a flap on the eye. We gently remove tissue using a cold laser, lay the flap back down, and now the image is coming to a clear point on the retina. Well, what we just did is we took one of the elements in the eye that shapes light, bends light, and we've altered it. Right? The cornea has been now reshaped, and the lens we're also removing from the eye. So all of the focusing ability of the eye is brand new when we're doing cataract surgery. Well, if your cornea hasn't been touched, it's easier to match the patient with the lens and know what the power is going to be, right? Because there's a stable refraction. But when the cornea has been changed, it's not as stable. And so you can see how it would be really handy to have an adjustability built into the lens. So as the patient heals post-surgery, you can kind of dial in the vision, to the patient's specifications. Now, all that to say, if I ran a practice, one list that I'd be particularly interested in is how many LASIK or cornea patients do we have who've already invested in their vision with the intention of not wearing glasses, who are over 50, and we know that they're probably in readers and frustrated. And so we get that list and we reactivate them. And what we'll probably find is that 50% of them don't have cataracts and might be a good candidate for an elective procedure like an RLE or CLR, depending on what your practice calls it. Or on the other hand, they might have an early cataract. Like, I'm pretty sure I do. And so and we can reactivate them. And so you can see how just having database management and segmentation for the savvy admin is going to be a key for all of your marketing communications efforts in the future. And I think we're just beginning to scratch the surface of leveraging the data we already have for the benefit of patients.
Yeah.
Did I geek out too much? I passed out.
No, that's, I mean, I think that's perfect. So that's definitely a sub segment, right? So now we're talking about not only just looking for, let's say cataract patients, just any cataract patient. Look, let's pull the database. Let's look for any patient that's, was diagnosed with a cataract and has not received any cataract procedure so far. That's a large number in most practices. That's actually a surprisingly large number for how much revenue opportunity that entails, how much like health benefit and quality of life we can start to produce for these patients. But going one step further, that's where it's really important to understand your database and what you have under your feet, is because, you know, you could get that number. And now what do you do with that number is a different thing. But then what about that sub segment? Like you're talking about, there's different lens options, and do you need a light adjustable lens, or do you just need a standard lens? Who's your insurance payer, and will they pay for any of this, or is it all going to be cash pay? This is where the nuances of your database comes in, and you've really got to understand what's under your feet, or else you're going to start picking up, you're going to start prioritizing these patients that, yeah, they need a cataract procedure, and they'll come back for a cataract procedure, but they're just going to do a standard IOL that their Medicare will pay for. But are there really some other patients in your database that you would rather prioritize a little bit? Prioritize is the wrong term in healthcare, but if we're going to reach out or customize a campaign for them, who are the ones you want to really customize that campaign for? And those are the post-refractive, under 60-year-old patients that are likely to opt in for a premium lens. And even further, if they're post-refractive, really they need that light adjustable lens or a similar product. So again,
you know, and I'll take a step back, Creed, and just kind of restate what you said, because you're right. I mean, we're on the business side of the world. It's easy to talk about, you know, the database and the campaign and the sales funnel and all of that. But it's also important to know that we probably should have started with this at the very beginning. And it's this thesis that there's as it pertains to patient care, there's nothing more powerful than an educated patient. That if patients know what we know, this is what Vance says. And a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about premium IOL conversions, and he said, I don't call it a conversion rate. I call it what would patients do if they knew everything I knew about this lens rate. Right. Well, that's all we're doing, is we're taking people who are at an age where we're pretty sure they're unhappy with their vision, even though they already made a big investment in the past. And we're saying, I don't know if you know this or not, but there could be some other things that are affecting your vision, and it might be worth stopping by. I mean,
Yeah.
that's an educated patient opportunity. And that's what your system is setting us up for. And I hope it's shifting mindsets of practice leaders when they hear us talk like this. Listen, I've been talking head for way too much. I've tried to commit on these sessions to have it be kind of 20 minutes of conversation and then, you know, open Q&A. But I know we've got a lot of your colleagues on the line.
Yeah.
You know, anybody have any questions for us as we're discussing these things? Well, we can talk even more about this, Creed, in the future. And next week, we're actually going to be talking with Chuck Williamson from Baton Rouge. I know you have been helping with some of his database work, and he's excited about it. Creed, I'm going to be inviting you back to actually be a part of that discussion with him, because I think there's going to be a nice he said, part of this. But I'd really love, I'm excited to hear the story of how he's using your technology to help engage patients for their betterment. And so that's what our next session is. After that, we've got a few more scheduled throughout August, and then we've got some exciting things in store for you as we get past Labor Day with what this forum is going to turn into. But I'll just tease you with that. You know, you can wait for those announcements as we come. Listen, we hopefully you found this little bit of time valuable. The biggest compliment you could do for us is to tell your colleagues and friends about it. You know where to find us every Thursday at 3, where we'll be talking about things like this. Creed, thanks for joining us. Thanks
Yeah,
everybody
thank you
else
for having me.
for joining.
Thanks, Matt and Creed.
You bet. Have a great rest of your day.